Welcome back to the Heal with Gold show. I am so happy to be here with you today. As I told you before, when I don't do a Wednesday show, I really miss you guys. A whole week is a lot of time without going live. When you come in, please say hello. But this week we have a Wednesday show, so I'm super excited. I'll see you twice in a week. Hi, Marina. And I will be able to be with you guys more often, which I love it. So say hello as you come in. There's a bunch of people online, but you don't say hello. So I don't know that you're here. I only know Marina for sure. Aloha Salud, Orita, Jerry. Guys, thank you so much for joining us. And without further ado, I'm going to bring Alex Katz, who is such an inspiring young lady. Hi, Paul. And I am blown away by everything that she does on a regular basis, especially considering where she came from. Hi, Lisa. And when I meet people like that, it just gives me tremendous drive to keep going, marching on, and to do big things because I see amazing people doing amazing things after they overcame such adversities. So without further ado, here is Alex. Welcome, Alex. Thank you so much for joining me. I was so impressed when you reached out to me to come to the podcast and you told me your story. I was blown away. I had to read it a couple of times. I'm like, what did she say? She went through this and this and this and this, and look how amazing she's doing today. So I would like you to share with everybody. I'm going to put some of the comments. When you will be in the middle of your story, I am not going to be posting comments because I don't want to distract you. Mm-hmm. But you know, if I see a question or something like that, I will definitely bring it up for you. So Alex, please tell us a little bit about yourself, about what you do now, and then take us back to your story from your childhood, where you came from, so we can understand how much you overcame.
Yeah, definitely. And I see all these people greeting me. Hello, thank you. And thank you for having me. So I do a couple of things, right? So where to start? I actually I'm a Ninja Warrior athlete and coach, and I run a Ninja Warrior nonprofit that helps to really build a sense of community in kids facing obstacles in their lives. We actually just got off from a big mentoring program virtual event that we were doing, which is awesome. And then I also work with kids in the Connecticut foster care system, both high school students and then college students experiencing homelessness and food insecurity and family estrangement. And then on top of that, I also actually run my own business. So I run Alex Katz Coaching, where I am a certified personal trainer and nutrition coach, but my approach is actually really taking my formal education in psychology and combining that into some mindset, life coaching, holistic nutrition coaching, really focusing on food as medicine and exercise as something that is really connected to your mental health, really helping women especially to build confidence both inside and outside, instead of, focusing on trying to change their bodies, really focusing on changing how they feel about themselves.
I want to, before you continue, tell you that the last few weeks, I did it purposely. I booked for January a lot of people that were going to come and talk about nutrition and fitness and health, because we're starting a new year, and always when we have this new year, this beginning, we make commitments, and I really wanted to prolong this inspiration on people. Yeah. So continue, right? And I want you to know, Alex, that I have made so many changes based on the speakers that came here. And I'm telling you that because you have no idea the possibility of what you can inspire the people that are here. So first of all, I went completely plant-based, and I have been plant-based now for 3 full weeks. Wow. And I went cold turkey, not even a drop of olive oil. That's how strict I became. And this was from an inspiration from 2 guests we had. And then last week we had Jessica here, and we talked about the night routine. And since then, I haven't brought my phone with me to my room. I say bye to my phone at 9 p.m. I go upstairs, I read, I'm putting oils and I'm pampering myself. And I have to tell you, and I'm telling everybody who's here, that I have been sleeping so much better. The first 3 nights were really hard. I was having heart palpitations, but it got better. And now I'm so excited. And I'm just want you to know that I am swallowing everything that you're saying, and I can't wait to learn from you and implement things in my life. But I want, before we go into tips and techniques and what you do in your work, tell us your story.
Yeah, definitely. And I love that you're already implementing things. That's awesome. So my story, I think, really relates to how I got into all of these things. So I guess, taking it back to when I was a kid, I grew up in, I guess what I would say is a pretty abusive household, physically, emotionally, right? Everything. And I always had really big aspirations as a kid. I always knew that I wanted to go to college. I wanted to help people. I think I decided I wanted to be a psychologist when I was like 15. And I think a really big piece of that was wanting to figure out what was going on in my brain, maybe my parents' brains, right? And then just wanting to help people and be that resource that I didn't have. So growing up, I was definitely dealing with a lot of different things at home. It wasn't exactly the safest place for me. And when I was a senior in high school, I said, you know what, I need to go to college. I need to make sure I go to college, and that's going to be my way out, and it's going to be my way to a better life. I actually applied to 63 scholarships to be able to go to college. I think I got about 12. And so right in there, that's a life lesson, right? Because I think I didn't get the first 30 that I applied for. And I think a lot of people would say, okay, this isn't working. I'm going to just stop, especially at 16, 17 years old. But I was really determined. I kept applying, and then ended up getting 12. I ended up going to college. And so I ended up cutting contact with my parents completely when I was 17 years old. So it's been actually over a decade now since we've been completely separated, no contact. And when I was in college, I was still 17 when I started. So I found myself struggling with where I was going to live, just managing basic things that I didn't think about. Honestly, when I left, I knew it was going to be difficult, but I didn't really understand the extent, right? So I started working 80 hours a week, literally started working the first day I stepped foot on campus, on top of full-time school. I was working in a factory overnight. I was loading trucks. You name a job on campus, I probably did it, honestly, which was really great because I got a lot of really great skills in, food service and sales and all these different things. But I didn't realize that campus was going to be shut down for about half of the year, every year, right? So for a week over Thanksgiving, and then a couple months over the winter, a couple months over the summer, spring break, right? So campus would close. And that was when the other students would go home to their families. And I didn't have anywhere to go. So when I moved on campus in September, I didn't realize that come November, I wouldn't have anywhere to be. And so this led to a couple of years of me couch surfing, living out of my little junkyard car. I bought a $500 junkyard car, named him Boris, and Boris was both my car and my bed for a little bit. And, just really getting creative, trying to figure out where to sleep for those months, while also still working a lot. I think I remember working one of my jobs, I made maybe $800 a month working 40 hours a week, right? That's not even rent. Like, as 17-year-old me didn't really understand how I could work so much and still have so little. But I was struggling, experiencing homelessness. At the same time, I ended up getting into kind of a toxic relationship, a romantic relationship with somebody that really, I felt like I lost my sense of self in the process. And with all of this happening, actually, when we ended up breaking up, I developed a series of eating disorders at that time. So I was really struggling with that. And then a year later, I ended up breaking my back. And I've had back issues since I was a child for a variety of reasons. I've had a compression fracture in my mid-spine since I was younger, but I ended up breaking my low back. I've broken it twice, actually. So I broke that, had a whole host of other spine issues that came with it, herniated discs, torn ligaments. There's a whole lot that went on there. And because I still had to work, I found myself mopping the floor on my hands and knees at one point. That's how bad it was. And so going through all of this, I really was struggling with my identity. I was struggling with my mental health. I was struggling with where to live, what to eat, all of these things. And so there's so much I could say that I learned through that process, and so many tips that I have and that I now use in my coaching. But what I will say is that eventually I actually was just really tired of feeling stuck. I was so tired of it. I was never, ever giving up, no matter what the situation was. But I knew that I had to do something to change my situation. And so eventually I actually had this life-changing moment, actually, where I was sitting in the library at school. I was maybe 20, 21 years old at this point, sitting in the library, remembering or thinking about how everybody else had it so easy. And I wish that, I really struggled with feeling like I belonged. I felt like I didn't belong there at all. I felt like nobody liked me. I really struggled. I was actually bullied as a kid. So I really struggled too with those relationship building skills. And I remember sitting in the library watching this group of girls, and one of them left, and the whole group was talking about her and saying, wow, she's so, amazing and nice and funny, and we love her so much. And I remember sitting there really jealous, thinking, oh, why can't that be me? Right. And this is how powerful your language is that in that moment I said, wait, hold on. Why can't that be me? Right? Like, why can't I be funny and smart and amazing and all these things that I already was? I just didn't believe at the time. Right. And so that was where I really started on this journey of realizing that your language is really powerful, and changing your language has the ability to change your entire life. And I don't know what I did from there on, but I ended up making Dean's List for the first time ever. I got involved with, I thought I was going to fail out at this point, but I made Dean's List. I got involved as a mentor in multiple programs. I graduated even after an academic advisor said that I shouldn't even be in college when I opened up about how much I was working. But I graduated, I made it into grad school, got my master's degree, and then said, I wanted to come back and create programming for other students going through a similar situation. And bunch of years in between, and here we are, basically, is the short version of it.
I have a bunch of questions.
Okay.
So, first of all, I want to go back to when you were midst homelessness.
Mm-hmm.
You were a young girl, a kid, you were a child in a way. And I have kids that age, and I can't even imagine. Were you afraid at night? Were you like, did you not feel scared?
No. I think a lot of that is just the way that I grew up. I've always been very, I spent years doing martial arts. I've always, I grew up having to fight a physically abusive father. I learned how to disarm a knife at a really young age. I spent a lot of time sleeping in the library or on friends' couches or in my car. I was always very scrappy. I always figured out what I was doing. I was very fortunate that I had friends who, I could stay with them, or if they weren't there, they would give me a key to somewhere to stay. I used to actually sneak in behind the custodian staff on campus to get into buildings. Don't tell anyone, but I used to, sneak in behind them to get into buildings. I think a lot of why I was in that other relationship for as long as I was is because it was a place to stay at points. So I think that I was very resourceful. I think that there were a lot of times where I made questionable decisions now, right? As like a 30-year-old looking back on it, I'm like, this probably wasn't the safest thing. But I also think that, we are so much more than the things that we do in an effort to survive. I think that a lot of people feel this guilt or this shame or things that they've done when they were in survival mode. And I really think that that's something that I've had to reframe in my brain, is that, like these friends who fed me or gave me a place to sleep here and there, I felt really bad for a while because I felt like I was really taking advantage of our friendship for my safety. And I had to really reframe that and say, okay, hold on. No, this is not who you are. These are the things that you did to survive.
Amazing. And for sure, I'm just, when you look at the generation today, the young kids today, I feel that they're not prepared for life even a comfortable life, right? They're not prepared for the workforce. I even talk to my children and they're looking for these ideal jobs where they feel so much purpose. And I'm telling them, this comes from you. You create that and you don't look for it outside. But I think that the youth today didn't have this resourcefulness and resilience that you had at such a young age. And that's really commendable and it's incredible. I mean, it's very unique. And I'm so happy that you get to share your story with the youth today, that they don't hear stories like that. They don't experience things like that. So that's incredible. I want to talk to you about a little bit about the work that you're doing today and how you're implementing everything. Tell me how you got to become Ninja, how you got into fitness, and because you did psychology and you got your master's, and how did you come back into fitness?
Yeah, great question. So I've actually been in both the mental health and the fitness fields for years. I would say at least 6 years on both. And it's interesting what you just said about resourcefulness. That's actually something I talk a lot about with both my coaching clients and the kids in foster care that I work with, because, and working at a college in general, right? So one of the things I see a lot is that we live in this instant gratification culture, right? And we live in a culture full of resources. And I think that resourcefulness is something that you gain a lot when you lack resources. And so, you have people with the resources where they haven't had to learn the resourcefulness. And so things like a computer, for example, that's a resource that I didn't have as a student. And I couldn't use the school computer lab because I was working until 3 a.m. in a factory. And by the time I got back, it was closed, right? So those were resources I didn't have. Housing, resource I didn't have. And so I really gained that resourcefulness. And I think that we spend so much time focusing on the resources we think we don't have, that we think everybody else has, that in that process, what we miss is the resourcefulness that we're able to gain from it. So that is one of the things that I teach, and in both settings. To answer your question more, so yes, master's degree more in the human development psychology field, but I've always been into fitness. I was a track athlete my entire life. Fitness was always my escape. Running was always my escape. And then dealing with this whole back issue, I ended up going to physical therapy. I spent most of my time in grad school in physical therapy. And I was really going to grad school because I wanted to come back to the institution I had gone to school at and create programming for students experiencing homelessness and family estrangement. That was the thing that I wanted to do at that specific place. But I'd always been drawn to fitness. And every time I went to physical therapy, I didn't want to leave. I didn't want to leave and go back to my academic advising job that I was doing at the time. And I also, having broken my back, I knew that I needed to really work on myself, right? So at that time, I was really strong. I had visible abs. I love to talk about this, actually. I had visible abs. And when I went to physical therapy, they told me that my core was weak. And at this point in time, right, coming out of the eating disorder, I was very like, what do you mean my core's weak? Don't you see my abs? I cared a lot about what I looked like, because I thought, and this is something I see a lot, I thought that if I looked like, what you see, I don't know, in the magazine, or somebody that looks happy and healthy and fit, that I would be happy and healthy and fit. I thought that if I looked better, I would feel better, or I would have more friends, or my ex and I wouldn't have broken up, right? Whatever we think achieving the body will give us. I was very obsessed with this idea. And something I teach now is that changing your body doesn't change how you feel about your body most of the time, right? Like you're saying, it has to come from the inside. But at the time, I was working out a lot. I had a six-pack. I went to physical therapy and they told me my core was weak. And that was when I really started to learn about the human body to that level. So your core actually wraps all the way around, right? So your low back, that's part of your core. There's so many layers to it. There's so many deep ab muscles. And what I learned was actually through my relationship with food, I made my body really susceptible to stress fractures and other types of fractures. I learned that the trauma, physical and emotional trauma that I'd gone through made my brain really disconnected from my body. Like I learned so much about the human body, and I just became really into becoming as strong as possible. And it was no longer about how I looked. It was about how I felt and the things that I could do. And, hoping that my back would not break again, and just honestly not wanting to be in pain, because for months, almost a year, I was unable to even walk. And so I went from somebody who was running all the time and so happy, and that was my escape, to literally not even being able to get up off the living room floor. And so for me, fitness was about really just becoming as strong as I could inside and out and reclaiming my identity.
How did you start building your strength, and what is your routine now?
Yeah. So at that time, I think my first goal was to be able just to run a 5K again. I went from somebody who was running 15 miles a day to like could not run a mile. And so I was lucky again. I came from this track background, but I started with just trying to start walking again and building up to running. Strength training is so good for you. It helps keep your bones nice and strong. You know, it's great for your mental health. It's great for honestly everything in your body. So I started lifting, and I started at the same time I started going through my personal trainer certification back in, oh my gosh, I don't know, 2014, maybe let's say 2014. And so learning as much as I could about the human body and learning about how the human body moves versus, you know, how we try to make it move when, right, we're sitting all day, and what does this do to your back and your hips and your butt and all these things, and how do they work properly? So one of the things that I did, and I really recommend, is starting really small and making sure you stay consistent, because we live in this culture where we like to try to do all the things and we're rewarded based on how extreme we are and how productive we are. And really, I've actually published a couple articles on habits. So it's funny you brought that up, because we know that for habit formation, you have to start small. You have to stay consistent. The reason a lot of diets don't work for people is because you're either cutting something out, which I'm really impressed that you went cold turkey on the plant-based there, but right, because you're cutting something out, it's not sustainable for your lifestyle. You're trying to do too much too soon. And especially coming back from injury, or especially like not having done anything athletic for a while, you want to give your body, not just your muscles, but your joints, your nerves, your tendons, your ligaments, you want to give them the ability to adapt to whatever it is that you're doing. And that's where you see a lot of people with injuries. I see it a lot in Ninja Warrior, the torn rotator cuffs and the knee issues, because a lot of people don't have the foundation, right? And that's the thing. You want to build a really strong foundation. Think of it like a house. Strong foundation before you start adding floors, because people come in Ninja Warrior and we just start throwing our bodies through the air and catching things before we even, know how to do a pull-up, and then people are getting hurt and you wonder why. And it's not a reflection of the sport, but you see this in any sport. I tore my Achilles doing track. You see this in any sport when people say that go big or go home mentality and try to do too much too soon.
Mm-hmm. So I want to talk to you about that, about going cold turkey when I went plant-based, because I knew, and I was told, don't do it right away, cut this, cut that. Yeah. But my husband had started plant-based, I would say 2 months before me. Mm-hmm. And I felt such a need to do it with him and support him. Yeah. I saw how he, I didn't want to cook 2 different types of meals. So he was just managing, he was just making a salad, and he didn't have like proper meals. And I was feeling bad about it. As a wife, as a spouse, I wanted to make for him and serve for him. And I said, you know what, I'm going to only be able to do that if I go. So I think I wanted to get healthy myself and nourish my body. I said this year I'm going to nourish my body with healthy foods, and I'm here to support him. But I have to tell you something. When I started it, one thing that I told myself, and I gained a tremendous amount of weight the last couple of years, and I always say it's not the pandemic's fault. It's my fault for eating the Oreos that I bought for the pandemic. But I said to myself when I was going into this idea of going plant-based is that I was not going to go on the scale. I go very rarely. I am not counting calories. I am not depriving myself. Because I'm eating tons of fruits and vegetables and healthy food. And yeah, I did lose some weight. I lost a nice amount of weight for the amount of time. I think I lost 5-6 pounds in 3 weeks. But I was not hungry. That's the thing. I do not feel, it's the first time in my life that I changed the way I'm eating, not because of the way I look, but because I wanted to nourish my body from within. So I just finished eating dinner. I had a big plate with rice and tons of vegetables that I cooked. And, who would think that you would eat this much rice at night? But you know what? It's whole grain, made with no oil. It's healthy food. So I'm having it. So I think that's why I went into that in that full. I was really already committed in my brain. I had been working on this for a couple of months until I had that speech and I said, "This is it. I'm in." But I understand what you're saying, and I am so ready to start moving my body again. I used to be very fit. I used to go tons to the gym, and I stopped about 10 years ago, and I'm having difficulty beginning again. Very hard for me. I got a bike, I go a few times, and then I stop. I go for a walk around the block, and then I stop. So, what do you say to the people that you coach that are having a hard time sticking? Because like you said, do little but stay committed and consistent.
Yeah. Well, and actually, what you were saying about plant-based, so there's a key thing that you brought up there, which I think works for both nutrition and fitness, which is you were really clear on your why. Like you knew exactly why you were doing what you were doing, and it wasn't based on changing your body. And I think for both that and fitness, this is huge because when you approach food or fitness from a perspective of I need to change my body, what ends up happening, especially if you're on a scale, is that it's not going to change as fast as you want it to change if it's something that you're doing sustainably. And so then people get frustrated and they give up too soon. They don't stay consistent, right? And a scale can actually fluctuate up to 6 pounds in a day based on, your hormones, how much water you've had, whether or not your digestion's doing different things that day, right? So one of the things I really do is actually try to educate people on why scales are not the best metric to use and get them away from the scale and focus on strength changes. And the other thing you said was you're focusing on whole foods and nourishing your body. And I think that's huge because food is literally medicine. The next actually professional path that I'm going down is a functional medicine path, looking at how food can actually fight disease in the body and how it can, it can do so much. And I think that, so you asked about kind of me getting into fitness, like at one point I was bodybuilding. After that, I tried CrossFit. I was doing competitive obstacle course racing. I got into powerlifting, and then now I'm doing Ninja Warrior. But along there, my relationship with food has changed so much. And I think when I was bodybuilding, I was tracking macros. So it's how much protein, how many grams of fat, how many grams of carbs, right? To get that bodybuilder look. And I wasn't focusing on the health benefits of food, the micronutrients that your body actually needs. And I was sick. I was really, really sick. I looked great, right? Air quotes, I looked great, but I was really not healthy. And I think there's this idea of looking healthy, right? Looking healthy and being healthy are not the same thing. So I love that you're focusing on, just those foods as a form of health, which is huge, and not how your body looks. And so to answer your question about fitness, if people don't know where to start, I'd really say, what's your why? Like, do you want to be able to run around with your kids and not be out of breath? Do you want to be able to pick something up or shovel your driveway? And, we were talking about how it's 12 degrees here right now. We have, we get snow all the time. Do you want to be able to shovel your driveway without throwing your back out? Do you want to be able to run a race, to climb a hill, to do Ninja Warrior? And so how you're going to train is going to be different depending on what your goal is. I encourage strength training for pretty much everyone. It's so good for you, so good for you in terms of long-term health. But I think that that's a me thing, right? I think from an objective scientific perspective, it's awesome whether you are trying to change your body, which I don't recommend, or you're just trying to be strong and healthy. It's significantly more effective than cardio. But if you are a runner, I love running. I don't run because of anything it does for my body. I run because it makes me really happy. I think I'm my happiest when I run. So if you find that you're struggling to do something, the answer is that you probably just don't want to do it. And so what is a way that you can move your body that you actually enjoy? Because if you like it, think about all the things that you like that you want to quit that are hard to quit, right? It's because you like it. So how can you find some style of movement that makes you excited to do it?
Wow, I love that. Wow. I'm going to have to put some thought into that. I definitely think that my why is to feel strong, to live long, healthy, and to be able to walk around and be active. Now I have grandkids, and I want to be able to be an active grandma.
Mhm.
But I have to think about what I really enjoy doing. I think that I used to love to dance. My husband hates to dance, so that's not going to work. But I'm gonna have to think about that because I think you are right. When I lived in New Jersey, I hired a personal trainer, and I said to him, with one condition, we're not gonna do twice the same thing. We're gonna keep changing and going places and playing basketball and running around and going to the park. And he's like, okay. And every day he took me somewhere else. And I think that, yeah, being outdoors is something that I love. And I'm going to have to put some thought into that. But I like the thought process of doing something that you love that requires movement, because then you're going to love it and you're going to do it. So I really love that. So it's going to be interesting to see how I'm going to, figure it out and incorporate some changes into my life. I want you to share with us the work that you do in the foster care and with the homelessness with the kids. Tell me about your experience with them, what they go through. I want to be educated in what, some of the kids are going through today.
Yeah. So what I do is actually run a program that is a college access program for high school students all over the state who are in the foster care system. So actually a few statistics for you since we're talking about education. So nationally, about 60% of high schoolers in foster care graduate from high school. And out of the 60% graduating high school, only 40% will go on to college. And out of that, only 3% graduate from
Wow.
college. Yeah.
Oh
Right.
my
And
God, so low.
3%. And even the 60% and the 40%, honestly, are pretty low. And so we know that, there's research to show that college is really the way to kind of break some of these cycles of abuse and homelessness into, a poverty and make a better future for yourself. And it is really important for them to have that opportunity. Part of the reason why it's so low is because many of them will change high schools multiple times within a year. They may change placements multiple times within a year. So you could have one student who within one school year has now changed homes, let's say 10, 12 times, and they've changed schools maybe 3 to 6 times, right? And so there's a lot of instability there. It's very difficult to focus on school, whether them or someone in my situation or similar situation, right? Very difficult to put school first when you have all these extenuating circumstances happening. So when you're worried about where you're going to sleep, what you're going to eat, when you're constantly changing families, and you have to think too that these kids are under 16 years old. So they're constantly getting this message that you're not loved, what you're doing is not good enough because we don't want you anymore. So we're going to send you somewhere else. So obviously it's very hard for them to focus on school. I will say that I have a lot of really, really amazing students that I work with. They really take this message and work with it the way that I did, saying this is my way out, but it's difficult. And so because they switch schools so many times, sometimes they're just not academically prepared for college because it's very inconsistent. You could have been in algebra in one high school and you switch high schools and they're like, nope, you're back in geometry. And so you don't get a complete education. And so what my program aims to do is we do a summer program. They come and live on campus with me at the college. They get college credits. They take college classes. They learn a lot about the environment. And we just surround them with this message that, yes, college is for you. Yes, this is possible. We do a lot of personal development work with them while they're there, a lot of resilience work, and just helping show them that, just because you don't have anybody in your life, in your direct life that you're living with, saying this is possible, just because you haven't seen anyone do this yet in your life does not mean that you can't, right? So we kind of bring them all together and show them that this is a future that they can have.
That's incredible.
Mm-hmm.
Now, so this is not a trigger for you. You're very strong, right? You're innately, you're a very strong person, because for some people it could trigger
Doing the work. Yeah. Yeah, no, definitely. I don't see it as a trigger at all. So I worked for the program for the first time as kind of one of the summer staff as a student before running the program, way back when I was a student, my senior year of college. And when that was actually what prompted me to say, I'm going to go get my master's degree and eventually I'm going to come back and run this program. And so now I've actually been running the program for the past 3 years. And I will say, when I was in college, I was in a very different place with my situation. And I think that sharing stories with the students, because that was also one of the ways that I would gain trust, right? Because they're so used to people being in positions of power with them who have no idea what they've experienced. And so I think that was one of the ways that we talked, we bonded, I gained trust. I think at that point it was a little bit triggering for me, but it was very eye-opening. And it was a way for me to really recognize where I was with my situation and really, again, like I said, reframe. I think reframing is the biggest tool that anybody has to reframe how I saw my situation. And I don't have any sort of negative feelings towards it because I love everything that I've done with my life. And I don't think it would have been possible if I hadn't, made the moves to be where I am, if I hadn't gone through the things that I've gone through. I think in college, I looked at it kind of like, why does everybody have something that I don't? Why do they have families? Why do they have somewhere to go? And then now I look at it as, wow, I learned how to be independent at a really young age. And so now all my friends who are in their late 20s and they're trying to figure the world out, I'm like, oh, I did that at 17. Here, let me show you, right? So I think everything is perspective. And so with our students, I've actually been a really good role model for them to kind of show them, hey, if I made it out, you can do this too. And I really appreciate having that ability. And then the college students, actually, so what I was hired to do was run the high school program, but I created an entire program for the college students. Like I said, I wanted to when I was there. And so I think that really, that's been a really good way to find purpose, I think, out of my situation, say, I'm going to come back, I'm going to help them. I've helped so many students with housing and food, and even just, again, being that resource when now they're in college and they're saying everybody else has parents, everybody else has somewhere to go, everybody else has these things. And I help them reframe and really focus on what they do have, what the student sitting in front of me, what do you have, and how can we look at your situation differently? And how do you, yeah, sure, they have resources, but let's look at all the resourcefulness that you have right in this moment.
Amazing. I want you to know that I've been interviewing thrivers for almost 3 years now, and you're the classic thriver.
Mm-hmm.
The woman who is happy that she went through, not that nobody wants to go through adversity,
Mm-hmm.
but the woman who appreciates what they went through because they appreciate who they became from it.
Mm-hmm.
So they are grateful for whom they became from going through it. And also the one who ends up going back and making their mess into into their message, into their purpose, and going exactly where it was broken for them, and then fixing for other people. That it's such an amazing source of joy, ultimately, right? That it gives us the ultimate purpose of, it makes the reason why we had to go through, because otherwise, what was the point, right? But for you, there was an amazing point, because now you can save all of these kids and give them hope and help them with their future. So it gives a reason for having to go through what you went through. It's fantastic. So you said that you plan also to go into functional medicine. And so what are your plans? What are your dreams for the next 5-10 years?
Yeah. So, well, right now, so in addition to all of that work that I'm doing with the kids and the college students, I also do run my own business, and I really focus on helping women with building confidence. So shedding limiting beliefs, with building body confidence, getting rid of the scale and the diets, and just really finding food freedom. And I love doing that. I really, really do. I actually have been getting into public speaking a lot lately, and I have this talk that I give called Shred the Should. And so that's something over the next 5 years I really want to just, expand on, because I think the message is so important. And it's really this idea that I think, especially as women, but everyone in general, we have these shoulds, right? The things that we think we should be doing with our lives. And this should is really what ends up holding us back, because we spend so much mental energy really following everybody else's shoulds, right? So like my parents are both accountants. I should be an accountant. So all this success that we're talking about that I have is not a real thing, right? According to their shoulds. Or when I started my business, it was like, no, that's too unstable. Don't do that. You need a regular paycheck, right? And everybody's really going to speak from their own fear and insecurity. I work with a lot of clients who are saying, I should look this way. I should have a house. I should be having kids. I should be doing all these things. And again, I bring it back to your why. Like why, if nobody else was around and it's just you, what do you do for you? And what do you think you do because you should? So at the start of quarantine, how everyone was like, oh my gosh, I've let myself go in quarantine, right? And it's like, I'm not doing my eyebrows and my nails and my skin and all this stuff. So I've actually put up a poll saying, what are the ways you think you let yourself go? And it was, those things. And then it was, which ones do you think you do because you should versus the things you actually like to do? So like shaving your armpits and your legs. Do you do that because you hate the feeling of hair? Or do you do that because you think you should, right? I had an ex once tell me I should shave my legs. And I was like, I'll shave mine when you shave yours, right? So it's that idea of like these things that we should be doing and we don't know why. So anyway, so I really use that shred the should idea to really help women come back to who they are at their core and build that power so they can just go out and crush life without worrying about all these things that they think they should be doing. So next 5 years, I really want to do more public speaking. I want to talk about that. I'm planning on starting maybe a nonprofit, honestly, to provide more housing options. I'd love to start a dog rescue and just really continuing to grow my business. And the coaching work that I do is actually going to be funding the nonprofit and the dog rescue at some point. So I'm actually saving and donating a percentage of everything I make through my business to helping kids who are homeless, basically, at the school that I went to.
Alex, you're so amazing. I have a dream. My dream for the next 5 years is to start in-person retreats. And
Ooh.
I don't know. I'm being very brave here because I'm saying all kinds of things on air for everybody to hear and keep me accountable. But I would like to invite you to be a speaker at my retreat that right now is just a dream, but we're going to crush it. I know I know why I want to do this. So I want to invite you to be a speaker at my first retreat.
I would love that. I'd be so honored to do that. Thank you.
So now we have to pull our forces together and make it happen, right? It's all in our hands. It's all a matter of us dreaming and making it happen. Now, I wanted to speak to you about one thing. Let me see if I have it very handy here. There is a book. Oh, here it is. Hold on. I just read this book not too long ago, Fault Lines. Have you read it?
I have not read it, no.
So it's a PhD, Carl Pillamer. So this book came out very recently, and it's about estrangement. And you mentioned at the beginning about estrangement, but you also talked about other children, right? The kids that you help, that they are also, there is estrangement there. In this book, the statistics is that 25% of people are estranged from somebody that they love, which is a relative. Yeah. Do you find this kind of proportions with the kids that you talk to?
I would say I'd believe that. I think that, people really, a lot of people really struggle with this idea of blood versus, chosen family. And I am a big believer that if there's someone toxic in your life, and you can't set a boundary with them, your brain is the most valuable real estate that you have, right? And so I always ask, would you let somebody stay in your house for free? This is what I say to the kids, right? Would you let somebody stay in your house for free? And sometimes they're like, yeah, sometimes they say no. And I'm like, okay, if you let someone stay in your house for free, what do they have to do for you to say you can't stay there anymore? Because I think that we value our physical possessions more than we value ourselves sometimes, right? And so I'm like, if they start breaking your stuff, are you going to kick them out? And so I think there's this fear around, well, I'm related to them, so I should love them, right? Go back to the shoulds. I should love them. I should speak to them. I should whatever. And I'm like, if they're coming in and destroying the valuable there's no way to reconcile that, and there's there's no boundary that can be set, then what's your move? And so I think people are actually becoming more comfortable with this idea of estrangement, recognizing that the people who deserve to call themselves family are going to treat you like somebody they care about, right? And so yeah, so I am seeing it a lot, but I'm not surprised because I knew it was there. When I was a student, I knew I wasn't just the only one. So I actually tried to start a club, and I posted on Facebook and I said, hey, any other UConn students in this scenario? Actually, really good story about this. Quick story. I posted and somebody actually commented and said, oh my gosh, me. And we started talking and we became friends. But I ended up being the reason that this person stayed in school. She was having a lot of issues with her situation. She felt like she was all alone, just like I did. She felt like it was hard and impossible. And she was like, you know what? I'm done. I can't do this anymore. And through me literally just being on this quest to say, you know, I know there's other people out there, she ended up staying and graduating. And now she actually, I think, just got her PhD. She was in a PhD program this time last year. Right. But I think whether it's this or anything like mental health, whatever, we always think that we're the only ones going through it and we feel so alone. But the reality is there are going to be so many more people than you could ever even imagine. And so that's why I went back and I started this program. And there were probably the same number of students going through it when I was there that are now, but I just didn't have access to it. I just didn't know, you know?
Amazing. You know, and that's the thing. I think that one of the reasons that I wanted to bring the stories that I interview live is because I want people to see that we all have a story. None of us are alone. You know, we suffer alone because we're embarrassed of our situation. We don't want to share it with people. We feel that we're going to be judged. And because we're so protective of this image, we end up suffering alone. But then once we start opening up and we see that there are others like us, we are not so alone and we can get inspired from each other. And I used to do those interviews privately and then write blogs. And I felt that I was missing this sharing this, you know, I want people to hear from the people's mouth and see, yeah, look, she's a great girl, you know, she's so wise and she overcame so much, then I can overcome you know, my obstacles too and be empowered by them. I want to ask the people who are here, we have a bunch of people here, if they have any questions for Alex, because this is an opportunity that you have to reach out to her and ask questions. If you do, please put in the comments and then I'll put them up on the screen and Alex will answer us. Tell me a little bit about your nonprofit.
Yeah, so it's Ninja Warrior based. We actually, so before COVID, we were doing events in gyms all over the country, working with kids in foster care, kids from low-income households, or kids just experiencing some sort of adversity. And I think that Ninja has a really great message. I don't know who here watches the show, but you know, it's a series of obstacles. You're falling a lot. I made a post the other day about an obstacle. I forget how many times I fell trying to get it, maybe like 30 right before I got it. But each time you fall, just like anything in life, it's a really great learning opportunity. And I actually had started Ninja. The reason I started Ninja, I saw it on TV and I saw Casey Catanzaro do, I think, the warped wall. And she really paved the way for a lot of women. I think when we saw her do this on the show, we were like, oh my gosh, I can do that too, right? So I saw it. But I was also really afraid of heights. I had a lot of trauma with heights just from the whole childhood abuse thing. I also had a lot of trauma with water. And so I was like, oh my gosh, I have to do this. And so when I was in Rhode Island in grad school, there were a lot of gyms there about obstacle course racing, which I was doing at the time. So I figured, you know, one of them started a Ninja Warrior program. I'm like, okay, I could do that, right? It's the same thing. I was so bad. I was so bad. And this is the ego thing, right? I thought I was really strong. I'm like, this is going to be easy. So bad. And then I had a lot to overcome when it came to heights and water. And I say this because I think a lot of people are afraid to try and fail, but I don't see it as failing. I see it as learning. And I think it's funny and also amazing to look back at where I was then compared to where I was now. And you know, the heights in the water, I started swim lessons years ago because I knew that I wanted to be on the show and I knew how I was with water. So I was doing swim lessons every single year. I would run up the warped wall, which is like 15 feet, our warped wall, and I would just sit on top of it and just stare over the room just to, get myself acquainted with heights. And so these kids come in and they're so filled with the word can't, right? I can't. I'm afraid for people to see me. I'm afraid to fail. I'm afraid to do this. Maybe they've had really negative consequences in the past, right? If they didn't do something perfectly first try. So it's really showing them that they're safe, that they can put themselves out of their comfort zone, that they can try things they didn't think they could do. They could fall and still be supported, and then get back up and do it again. And I think the metaphor of overcoming obstacles is so perfect. So anyway, that's a lot of what we do is we work with kids. And so because of COVID, we actually got to start the mentoring program, the virtual mentoring program that I'd wanted to do for so long. And so we paired little ninjas with big ninjas in the community. We actually have Jessie Graff as one of our mentors. If you know who she is, she was like the stunt woman for Wonder Woman. She's like an amazing stunt woman. She's probably one of the most famous women in the sport. She's amazing. And so just really being able to get this out there and to have these kids, Jessie's slogan is be your own hero. And she's somebody that millions and millions of kids idolize all over. We have mentors who are also well-known, maybe less well-known, but for these kids to be able to see this and say, I've seen this person on TV, I connected with their story, I connected with something about them, they were really brave, they were really smart, and then, wow, like now this person's my mentor. It's cool. It's really cool. Yeah.
Very cool. We have two questions, so hold on. Okay. What one dream would you dare to dream if you knew you could not fail? Question by Paul Cummings.
Great question. It's interesting because I think the way that I approach things is, at least now, this is recent, this is within the past couple of years, is looking at it like I can't fail, if that makes sense. Like a couple of years ago when I was really struggling with self-esteem and self-confidence, I was actually at this event and somebody said, the difference between you and the person you want to be is that the person you want to be acts boldly consistently. And I've kind of adopted that. I have that on my wall now. That was Nick Pags. I shout him out all the time for saying that because it literally changed my life. And so I really adopted this idea of acting boldly consistently. So if at any point there's something I want to go for, whether or not I think I'm ready, whether or not I think I'm good enough, because we all have these thoughts sometimes where we don't think we're ready or good enough, I just go for it. And I just act boldly consistently. I don't even think about would I fail, would I not, I just do it. I think that right now the big dream is starting probably the nonprofits and the dog rescue. I think starting the business was one that I was afraid to do for forever because I listened to everybody else saying I should do stuff that other things. But I would say for me right now, it's just being happy. Honestly, I think that's the biggest dream I have is just to be happy. Outside of like, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. It's literally just to be happy, which I am, but continuing to be.
Amazing. We have another question. When were you on the show?
Good question. So I've competed in the World Championships for 3 years, but I have actually not been aired on television. So the way that Ninja works is a little bit confusing. I actually got the call last year and then COVID ended up happening. And so then they ended up canceling and then they did like a special version and they called more people and recast. And then I ended up not being in the recast for last year. And actually decided not to apply at all for this year. So that's really interesting actually, because so 2 years ago, I had a massage, 2 years? Yeah, 2 years ago, a massage therapist tore my hamstring, actually. She picked my leg up off the table and just like snapped it. And what I didn't realize at the time was that she actually tore my nerve too. And I'm just now finding this out, like the amount of nerve damage that I have over 2 years later. So I've decided to take quarantine as an opportunity to just really heal and rehab and just come back strong for next year.
Fantastic. So you're going to go back. You want to continue doing that. It's something.
100%. I'm still training. I'm still coaching people. I'm still doing all these things. I'm not in a ninja gym right now. I'm just, training from home. I built a ninja rig in my backyard during quarantine. So, but wow. Just really taking this opportunity to, the show's a lot. There's a lot of big moves you have to make. So I'm not risking it. I'm just taking the time to rehab.
Amazing. Alex, you are an inspiration. You got the X Factor, as they would say on the X Factor show. No, I'm really inspired. I think that I would like to share with everybody that what I'm going to do after the show is really try to assess where am I moving that I'm happy, and see how I can incorporate that in some kind of an exercise routine. And I encourage other people that are watching, people from the group. We can go back into the Facebook group and talk about it, but really continue in finding our way, our own way to move more, but so we can take care of our health, and not from looks and what we think we should look like, but of being healthy and feeling healthy so we can live long lives and accomplish a lot of good things, right? That should be the goal. And I love that you feel this way too, because so often fitness people, they're focusing on the looks, and every time that I did, it did not turn them well,
It usually doesn't. It's usually when you stop focusing on how you look is that your body starts to change. And I will say too, I think just on that note, don't overcomplicate it, right? So it's funny because I did not like dancing for the longest time, but now I have all my clients doing dance breaks in the middle of the day because I think otherwise we just sit at the computer and we don't move, and it's so good for your mental health. But yeah, figuring out what works for you. Don't overcomplicate it. If you haven't been working out, I have a lot of people start with 5 minutes. Literally, that's it. 5 minutes a day. Can you commit 5 minutes to yourself? Or I love pull-ups. I like lifting heavy. I don't love physical therapy for my hamstring. So can you do it in a way that's easy for you? So we like to watch Survivor at night, usually like 8 or 9 o'clock at night. We'll sit down and watch Survivor. That's been our quarantine show. I'd never watched Survivor before in my life, and actually flip or flop now because we're looking at getting into flipping houses. But, so I know we're going to do that. And so I say, okay, let me sit down and do my hamstring rehab while we're walking this, right? So that's called habit stacking, when you have a habit that you already do and you're able to then kind of stack another habit onto it. So I know that if I want to sit down and do hamstring rehab on my own, I don't have the motivation, right? Because I have the why. I do have the why, but a lot of times I don't want to do it because I'm like, oh, my pull-up bar is right there. So make it easy for yourself. If you want to practice more gratitude, can you do it while you're brushing your teeth and looking in the mirror? You're brushing your teeth anyway, right? So that's just my quick tip on that. Make it something you like, make it easy to add in and add it onto something that you're already doing. So it makes it easier for your brain to remember to do it.
Love it. Love it. And it's funny because today I was working on the workbook for my course, and I doing all that I was working on today was on the worksheets for habit creation. So I'm glad to know that I'm on the right track. Well, Alex, I want to stay in touch with you. I want to see how we can collaborate, work some way, because you are amazing. I'm blown away. Let's just see a few more comments before we say goodbye. My pleasure. Yes. Thank you for this incredible story. And when I first started to train for my first marathon, salute, I went out 5 minutes and 5 back. After a few days, I started adding a minute and so on. Yes, that's the way to do. Good for you, salute. Thank you all so much. Thank you, Alex. I appreciate you all being here. Go to my page and share the video, share what you learned, implement something in your day, and then tell us so we can feel so happy that we added some goodness into your life. And until Wednesday, I'm interviewing Sean Sorner. Sean is considered one of the 7 most inspirational people today. He 2-time cancer survivor, 1 year in a coma, half a lung functioning. He climbed Mount Everest and every peak in every continent. He went to the South Pole, North Pole. There is a movie about him on Prime, Amazon Prime. He has been on every major show, and he's going to be here with us. So join us Wednesday night at 8 p.m. And I'll see you then.